Good morning and welcome to Daylight Church Online. We're just so thankful that you're joining us this morning and hope that you have a great experience. We want to let you know that if you'll go to mydaylightchurch.com, there's a card there that says Online Church. And on the Online Church card, it'll tell you everything you need to know about being a part of our online church community, how you can get involved in small groups, how you can give financially, how you can be involved in the service projects that we do. So even if you're in Kansas or Cambodia, you can sure join us and be a part of our church. We'd like you to check it out there and introduce yourself. So go to mydaylightchurch.com and check out the online church card. Thanks.
My name's Chris Jones, and I'll be your presenter this morning. And I'm going to I've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to jump right into this. This morning, we're going to be talking about adversity. Adversity is a strange thing because whether you know it or not, it sorts us out, it defines us of who we are, shows us our limitations. But yet we're unaware of its existence most of the time up until it becomes the mountain in our path or the storm in our life or the change in our identity of who we are. And then we become very aware of adversity. Now, my background in my personal life, my career is in leadership, and I've been doing it for more than 20 years, and I've led very large groups of people to very small groups of people through change, challenge, and adversity. And I've witnessed people who have done fantastic and crushed it through adversity, and I've witnessed and observed people who have been crushed by adversity. Now, in my own life, I've had a lot of personal adversity, more probably than normal, which is why I'm probably speaking to you about it today. And I wanted to share what I've learned through observation and personal experience filtered through some scriptures that I'm going to share with you later. A couple of years ago, and I had no idea why I did this, but I woke up one morning and I just really wanted to post on adversity online on social media, and I did. Now, this is not word for word. It's been more than 2 years. This is just from memory. But I got up and I posted on dealing with life's storms, and it wasn't very long. But I had made a statement that came from a scripture that I'm going to share with you. But I made this statement. Now, this is a true statement. This is a life lesson. That during adversity, you're going to grow. You will either grow stronger, further ahead, and further prepared for life and better acclimated in your new identity, or you will grow weaker, further behind, and further frustrated with life. But you will grow. Now, how you grow is heavily dependent and weighted by the attitude that you have as you go through the adversity. In other words, you're going to come out of the storm or acclimate in the storm by the attitude you have. That's going to impact heavily how you come out of it. Now, when I posted that, there was 2 people that responded that stood out above everybody else's post because they seemed to personify this statement. And the first one said, "This is what I need to hear this morning. Thank you for the inspiration." Now, I had no idea what he was talking about, and I wouldn't know until the next morning. But somebody else, she posted, and she said, "Yes, but why does it always have to be storms? Why can't I just catch a break?" Now, I knew what was going on in her life, and I knew that for the last 3 to 4 months, she'd been dealing with some things, and it was really starting to take a toll on her mentally, emotionally, even physically. It was starting to show up. And I can tell you she was going through it with the same attitude that was reflective of her post. So after she made this post, in the next 3 to 4 months, I witnessed and watched as her health continued to decline until she would be in a health crisis and have to be hospitalized. I watched as her personal relationships would become strained. And I watched, she had a very specialized career. She'd been doing it for years. She loved it. She would have to give it up and take a job because the stress was becoming too much. But what I want you to hear is in that same 3 to 4 month period after she had made that her life began to unravel. The very storm that was causing all these problems in her life would evaporate like that and be gone. But yet now it's been more than 2 years and she is left fighting to try to get back some of what she's lost. Now I did not know that when he was posting that, he was in the hospital being prepared to have his leg amputated. I didn't know that. And I wouldn't know it until the next morning when he posted pictures of him post-op in the hospital bed explaining what happened. Now, I followed and tagged along because he chronicled his journey on social media of how he went through all this. And I wanted to watch because he took this statement and he took the scriptures I'm going to share with you and he lit it up like a torch and he used it to find his way out of the dark. And he did. He had a fantastic attitude. He didn't look back at what he lost. He looked at what his life could potentially be, and he always had a nice positive thing, and he just, a statement to say for the day, and he just kept pushing in, making the best out of it. I watched online his first few steps in therapy on his new prosthetic leg. I watched his words, not mine, as him and his estranged wife would come back together. And then through this new attitude and this renewed idea that they would find a healing in their relationship. Now, I wish I could tell you that it just continued this way and life was just easy for him from there on out, but it wasn't because adversity would push in a little harder and his other leg was now in jeopardy. He was rushed to the hospital. And it got dark for him and he let his torch burn out and he started to use the words like fair. Listen to me. When you're going through adversity and you start using words like it isn't fair, fair is a 4-letter word. You need to get that out. That will always lead to you feeling sorry for yourself. And feeling sorry for yourself will always lead to you giving in to the adversity, and it leads to suffering. And there's a difference between adversity and suffering. But he wasn't there long because he must have made the decision, I'm not going to do this. With no legs or one leg, I'm going to come out the other side the absolute best I can. And he lit his torch back up and he started pushing in. With a fantastic attitude. Thank God he didn't lose his other leg. But what I want you to know, what I want you to hear, through his adversity, he grew stronger, further ahead, and better prepared for the future and better acclimated in his identity. See, she, on the other hand, she grew weaker, further behind, and further frustrated with life. Two different attitudes, two different outcomes. Now, the verse that I had shared with this that helped me filter this and helped me kind of find what I'm about to share with you is from James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. And if you have your Bibles with you or your digital Bibles, if you would please turn to James chapter 1. We're going to read through it together. So while you're doing that, who is James? Well, James is believed to be the half-brother of Jesus. He's the pastor of the church of Jerusalem, ground zero for Christianity. He would take over for Peter. James is known for being extraordinarily wise, very humble and very meek, but never underestimate James. James was just a beast of a leader. He was super strong and very just a fantastic person to lead. So, who is James writing to? Well, in verse 1 it says, James, a bondservant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes who are dispersed abroad, greetings. Now, I've always heard that been taught that it is Christians that are being persecuted that had to leave and go abroad. And that's kind of a cleaned up version. If you know historically what was happening at that time with Rome and what they were doing, that Rome would continue to ratchet down after we know about the writings of Jesus, and they would become more and more and more oppressive. And there was a kind of a mass exodus going on up until you get to the mid-60s in that part of the world, and then Rome starts the campaign to destroy Israel. And they do it in 70 AD. So somewhere in that time frame from 40 to 60 AD is when they believe this letter is written. They are in mass exodus. So is this Christians that's being persecuted that had to leave and go abroad? Let's put it in real terms. These are immigrants. These are strangers in a strange land, probably don't speak the language, don't understand the customs and the cultures, look strange, act strange, stand out like a sore thumb compared to everybody else. There is no Google, so you can't Google in real time where it's safe to go. So where it was safe, word of mouth a week ago could be extraordinarily hostile now. So you don't know. There's no online banking. It's only what you can carry. And after Rome gets done doing what they're doing, there's probably a lot to carry. So that is who James is writing to. People going through an extraordinary amount of adversity. That's who he's writing to. Now, I'll qualify what I'm about to say. James chapter 1 is read by most, I think, as a verse on adversity. and then it's just random wisdom of James. I don't read it like that. I read it in 4 principles that James gives in how you deal with adversity, which also kind of lays out the path of faith. So if you got your Bibles ready to go, we're going to read this together. I'm going to do a little bit of expository teaching just from verses 2 through 4, and then we're just going to go for the sake of time. So verse 2 says, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and lacking in nothing." Now in verse 2, there's a word there, trials. Trials comes from the Greek word parasmos. Parasmos means testings, trials, tribulations, affliction. It means suffering. It also means, in a different context, temptation. It doesn't mean temptation here. It will later on in the chapter, and we'll get to that. Here, he's talking specifically about adversity. What kind of adversity? Well, he says various adversities. Anything you can imagine these people would be going through as they're trying to get away from the oppression, the persecution. He goes on to say in verses 3, there's this word. He says, "But the testing of your faith produces endurance." This word endurance is hupomene. It means steadfastness. It also lends itself to patience and endurance. Please never confuse that with a static position. This is still in path and in journey he is talking about. So those words like patience, steadfastness, endurance, they're for moving forward. Now, this word where he says perfect, and then we're going to jump in. I just want to make sure we understand everything so we don't have to get held up. But this word where he says this testing of your faith, let it have its perfect result, that it might make you perfect. That word perfect doesn't mean as in flawless or without any blemish. It means perfect as matured, fully grown, fully ready. It's like I am a mature man, but I am not perfect, but I am complete. And that's what James is talking about. So now let's just jump in and go. Consider it all joy. Man, that is a strange thing to start off with these people going through this kind of oppression and adversity. But I think this harkens back to what I was saying is you're going to come out of it the way you went into it, with the attitude. So I think that's what James is saying. Listen, your storm isn't going anywhere. There it is. God's not relieving it. It is what it is. This is just life. And I think what James is saying is embrace your storm. Embrace it with the best possible attitude that you can come up with, because that is going to define how you come out of this thing. So to yield the best results, push in with a good attitude. Embrace it. And then he says this. He says to put your faith to the test. Put your faith into your center of who you are, your cardia, the essence of who you are, where you choose your will. Put your faith, not your religion, not churchianity, but you and your relationship with God. Put it in the center of who you are, and then lean in and test it. And he'll produce the endurance you need to get through this thing, to survive or get the best possible outcome that you can. But now he goes on to say that this endurance, this steadfastness, this patience that comes from this testing of your faith, not as an opinion of or belief, but as in a conviction of testing in with your faith and leaning in on your faith to get you through it. As you do that and it produces what you need to endure it, it will begin to grow you. It will begin to make you stronger. It will begin to make you better suited for the storm, and it starts to grow you for other storms. So it grows you, what was it, stronger, further ahead, and better prepared for the future. That's where I got that from. So he's saying, put your faith to the test, push in with a good attitude, and it will grow you and make you stronger. And I've always heard this taught that he's talking about spiritually there. He's not just talking about spiritually. James is writing to people who's going through some serious, heavy adversity physically. He's talking about if you'll use this, it'll grow you stronger mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and always as a person. So it's this idea and the concept that you are grown in adversity to become stronger, where you can not only survive it, but potentially thrive in it or get the best possible outcome you can. So that's number one that James says. James says, embrace your storm, push in with a good attitude, do your best, put your faith to the test, and it will produce what you need to endure it and get through it and grow in it. The second thing he talks about is in James 5-8, and he's carrying on. This is not a new subject. He's carrying on in this thought of testing your faith, maturing, growing through this adversity. And then through adversity, you're going to have to make choices and decisions that you've never had to make before in your life. You're going to be faced with obstacles that you've never seen. You're going to have to push in and come up somewhere with a logical answer of how to get through this. You're going to have to come up with a solution. And James says, ask God for wisdom. And if you'll ask him, he'll give it to you. But he says, but ask in faith, because you don't ask in faith, you'll be knocked around like the waves of the sea, just tossed around. He's saying life's going to knock you around. But you got to ask in faith for wisdom. What's he mean? Well, number one, wisdom is an earmark of maturity. So we're still continuing in maturity. Maturity doesn't ask, give me a sign. It doesn't say, what should I do? What would you do? Wisdom says, tell me what I don't know, what I need to know, then I'll assess and make a decision, and I'll use wisdom on how to move forward. That's wisdom. That's what it does. James says, ask God for his wisdom if you need it, and he'll give it to you through this testing of your faith and growing. Now, all through this, there's this undercurrent that James beautifully writes through it that lends itself to emotions. And through this piece of it, as you're having to make difficult decisions, you are going to have to deal with some anxiety and worry. It's going to be there. But never focus on anxiety and worry, because here's what happens. As you invest in anxiety and worry, you give your resources and your time, anxiety and worry begins to grow. And here's what happens as you grow anxiety and worry. As you have to make these decisions, and you might have the best decision of how to navigate through that adversity. But as you give yourself to anxiety and worry, you're going to start doubting yourself. And as you start doubting yourself, you're going to start asking others for their input. What should I do? And as you listen to them, you may end up choosing an inferior solution to the one that you would have had. So what he is saying is push in faith. Don't give yourself to anxiety and worry. Again, it's going to be there. But it's saying focus on what you need to focus on, what's in your compass, in your heart. Because anxiety and worry will lead to you being knocked around by life. So that's number two. Use the wisdom of God to navigate through adversity of life. Now, number three is James 9-18. He continues on. Now he's talking about peirasmos and temptation. We're talking about path and we're talking about journey. So as we're in this path and this journey and as we're growing, he starts warning about temptation. And the first thing he says is, you of humble means, be exalted. Embrace it. It's yours. If you have money, if you do happen to have money, help those that don't. Now, I don't think this is the actual point he's trying to make. What he's trying to do is frame up this idea of temptation, because he goes on to say, to give us this idea and concept that as you are trying to seek riches and wealth, in the middle of the pursuit, you will die. He's not talking about a physical death. So what does that mean? See, as you're on your journey and you're testing your faith and you're pushing in and you're enduring, you're where you need to be, this thing starts to growing in you from the internal to the external. It's a spiritual thing. It starts to bring out this beautiful things. Paul talks about it in Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. He calls them fruits of the Spirit. And as the testing of your faith happens, it's not an event, it's a process. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control begin to grow from the internal to the external. It begins to happen in your life. I always think of it as the good stuff. You begin to grow this good stuff as you're on your path in your journey. And James is warning about the temptation of seeking riches and wealth. So what would that mean? For some reason, we like to think that riches and wealth, if we can achieve that, it will bring sanctuary. And James is saying that's a fallacy. If you achieve riches and wealth, all you've achieved is an abundance of a resource, that's all. And when you get there and you've come off your path of what grows the good stuff, and you've taken out of your center of who you are, the testing of your faith, you've put your faith into the resource that it will give you peace and joy. It will circumvent all this adversity. And James says you're going to find out as you change your path and you prioritize incorrectly seeking wealth and riches at the top, as you start to move towards that good stuff in you, it will die. That will be gone. He says, stay on path. Now, what I want you to hear is he's still saying use the wisdom of God. Use wisdom, which means don't take a vow of poverty. Do what you got to do for your resources, but properly prioritize it where it needs to be. Stay on path and journey. Now, as you're going on path and journey, if you've made good decisions and you start to acquire some riches and wealth, help other people out, but the good stuff is still growing in you. So it's still there. So he is saying, he's talking about going off the wrong path and going to the wrong thing. Essentially what you're doing, whether you know it or not, when you put that as your number one thing in life of what you feel like if you can get to, it will bring sanctuary, then you've made that your God. You've put all your faith into that. Now he goes on to talk about more parasmos. Jesus taught on this too. Jesus calls this the thorns. Now, for sake of time, I'm only going to give you one example so we can get through it. But James says that God will never tempt you with pleasures of the flesh. And he doesn't say the devil tempts you. Do you know what he says tempts us? He says we do. We all want these things. We all want to feel good. We all need it, especially if you're going through adversity and it's stress and you're going through it. And sometimes it's all you can do to keep your torch up, right? And get pushing through correctly. We all need a break. I need a break. I just need to feel good for a minute. And James says to be careful what you choose to feel good. He says God won't tempt you with this. Because what he says is, once lust conceives and gives birth to sin, and sin matures and does what it does, it will bring death. What kind of death is he talking about? Well, temptations, pleasures of the flesh, however you want to phrase it up, I'm just going to put this into modern ideas. As you're going through life and you start choosing things that might make you feel euphoric, or, you know, when I was young, when I was a kid, we said, we got to catch a buzz, you know. And we start choosing things to feel good that gives us a sense of temporary solution. And he says, as you go back and so this desire, you've given birth to it. So in other words, you've just created a behavior out here in the physical world. And as you keep going back to it and you invest in it, it begins to grow. Jesus called it thorns. And Jesus says, as you get into the thorns and you realize, wait a second, I have a problem. This is starting to impact my relationships in my life. And you go to try to leave the thorns. If you've ever been in thorns, you know you can't hardly get out by yourself. It's tough. Once you get stuck in the thorns, it's painful. And this is the cruelty of what thorns do to you in your life. Because now, in order for the people you love to be with you, they got to come be in the thorns with you, which is probably not going to happen. So now, when you're locked in addiction, you start to watch as what you love falls away from you, and you can't get out of it to go stop it. Relationships, you become estranged from your family, your health, your finances. And that's what James is saying. They will bring death. Death of the good stuff. Jesus says from this place, the good stuff don't grow. Now, some people would tell you that's the punishment of God, and that is not the punishment of God. Because James also says in this that God's shadow doesn't turn. And he says God only gives you the good stuff. So this is more, God does hate sin, but not the act. So therefore you got to be punishment. It's more the context of God knows what happens once you get into the thorns. He knows that thorns bring suffering. That's what comes from thorns, is suffering. And that's what it grows. That's the fruit it bears. That's why God hates sin. So it's more of a parental love about seeing you suffer. He don't want to see you suffer, and he wants to see you make others suffer. That's why God hates sin. That's the reason why God hates sin. It's not you. It's not punishing you. So that's what he's talking about. It's the death of the good stuff. Because as you stay on your path, now all through this third part, he's talking about discipline of your path, discipline of your faith as you stay and choosing what is correct. So I got to tell you, the temptation, these things are emotions. And there is a modern concept, and it is modern to our culture. It came out of us. It's not been in the past. It's a modern concept. And it's the ideas that in your center of who you are, your essence, that's where your emotions are. And that's incorrect. It is emotions are gauges that tell you how you feel. Emotion should never be put into your compass of how you move through life. Because the truth is, emotions want immediate gratification. Emotions don't understand consequences. Emotions don't understand long-term investment. Emotions don't understand these things. Does that mean emotions are bad? No, it just means we're to manage our emotions. And remember, in the center of who we are, our faith, as we push in and test it, we have to choose what is right, even when it's sometimes not convenient or what we want to do. But through this, we manage our emotions. Anybody who allows their emotions into their compass of how they choose to go through life will always find themselves in thorns or find themselves never getting quite to the good stuff, because it requires long-term growth. It requires a long-term plan, and emotions don't allow for that. Also, this is about being disciplined in your path and how you move forward. Mental health is critical. Using God's wisdom says if you're having emotions that are out of sorts and they're acting up a little too much and becoming hard to control, then you need to go get that taken care of. There's nothing wrong. Go find a therapist. And there's bad therapists, there's good therapists. Use God's wisdom and keep going until you find the one that can help you so you can get up ahead. This is about path and journey and choosing wisely. That's also for your physical health, which is where I'm at in all transparency. That's where I've came to. Now I've got to deal with some of the things I've neglected in my path and my journey. But that's the number 3. That's path and journey, that through adversity, we choose what's right. We stay disciplined in our path. In the macro, we've made decisions. We're in our faith, and we've already decided how we're going to move forward with wisdom. In the micro, emotions want what they want. And if we listen and we come off our path, we're going to get in the ditch. We'll always make a bad decision. Stay on path. Be disciplined in your faith. And the last part is James chapter 1, verses 19 through 27. And it's exactly what you think the pastor of Church of Jerusalem would talk about. And it's the love of Christ. It's the commandment. And he starts off with this. He just finished up talking about being careful of temptation to come off your path and not stay your journey to get to the good stuff. And he says, so be a doer of the word, not a hearer only. You'd be deceiving yourselves. You're going to get into trouble. But stay on path and journey. He says, but as we look into this perfect law of freedom, this perfect law of liberty, which is the example of Christ, I always think of it like this. It came from Leviticus 19:18, which is the priest's commandment of love thy neighbor. And then when Jesus was asked, he said, yes, that's how you get eternal life. And then Jesus defines it with the Good Samaritan. So Jesus says, this is what it means to love. And then Jesus said, now watch me, I'm going to give you the example. This is how you love. Acts 10:38 says, Jesus went about doing good, without judging, without being demeaning, without condemning, giving on need versus deserve. And then Jesus says, now I've explained it. Now I've showed you. And John 13:34 and 35 says, now you go do it. That you love one another as I have loved others. By this they'll know you're my disciple. That you move forward. So I like to think of it is as God sees the behavior of Jesus start to manifest in us, and this love, this joy, this peace, this patience. The fruits of the Spirit are actually grown for others as we come through. And I do want to say this is using the wisdom of God. Use the wisdom of God in the sense of don't start feeling like you've got to go and try to fix the world. That's not what it's about. It's in your path and your journey. Use wisdom. As you come across it and there's people in need, then you take care of it. You become the Good Samaritan. Now here's what I'll tell you. When the skies are blue and there's no clouds and life has no adversity, what you can see, it's easy to encourage and comfort somebody that needs help. It's easy to give to them when you feel good. But let me tell you, if you're in the middle of a raging storm in your life, and it's all you can do to hold up your torch and try to move through it, that becomes difficult. It becomes much easier to simply say, you know, I've got my own issues going on. You know, I'll pray for you. And James says, no, you need to do what's right even when it's not convenient. Do what's right when it's not convenient. Let me tell you, if you need encouragement and comfort, go encourage and comfort. It's the quickest way to get it. I'll give a message, I'm sure, in the future about the encouragement of God and the comfort of God and how it's given and how it's received. It's built in. It's already there. So he is saying is, do good even when it's not convenient. And then he pushes over, and he's still talking about love, and he says, be fast to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, because the anger of man doesn't work towards the righteousness of God. What's the righteousness of God? The commandment of Christ, his love. So what's he talking about? Well, anger is what? It's an emotion. It's an emotion. What does emotions want? Immediate gratification. If you let anger take center stage, it will. It's like the 5-year-old, and it'll burn down everything in your life. That's what anger will do for you. James says, get a hold of your tongue. Watch what you say. Be fast to listen, slow to speak, quick to forgive. Forgive quickly. See, as you're going through adversity, emotions run hot. You want to say things. You want to be heard. There's a little bit of pride in that. James is saying you got to manage your anger because this is about the love of Christ. So who do you lash out the most at when you're going through adversity? The people you love. The love of Christ starts at home. It starts being good to those you love. But yet, those people who are going through the adversity with us, firsthand experience right there beside us, or trying to support us in this adversity, now we're going to lash out them and we're going to put them through extra adversity that they shouldn't have to go through. But that's what anger does. That's what James is saying. Don't do that. And if you run your mouth and say things to people as a stranger in a strange land, consequences can be extreme. You don't know who you're dealing with. Walk in love. Do what you're supposed to do. Manage your emotions. Manage your anger. Walk in love. He finishes this whole chapter with something that I didn't understand for a long time. And he says this, and if you don't take care of the widows and the orphans, your religion is in vain. You stay unstained from the world. This is not the only time James has said this. Paul quotes him as saying this. What's he saying? What kind of adversity are they going through? That kind of adversity produces widows and orphans. I think we begin to hear the heart of James. And James says, listen, the weak, you take care of them. You love them. Because if you don't, your religion is in vain. Don't call yourself a part of what we are. We take care of the weak. We love those who are hurting and in need. So there's your 4 steps that James says to do. Number 1, when you go through adversity, it's hard. It's tough. I get it. I very much get it. James is saying push in with the best attitude you possibly can. Embrace the storm. Put your faith to the test. Rely on it for what you need to get through it. And it will grow you. It will make you stronger. It will make you more enduring. It will give you the patience you need to get through it. And it will grow you for the storm and prepare you for future storms, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So put your faith to the test with a conviction. Number 2, he's saying use the wisdom of God to make these choices and navigate. You make the choices that are right. Stick to them. So it's making a decision that's macro, which means this is the compass. This is how we're going. And don't let the micro of emotions start to pull you off, because you will be tempted to be pulled off. You stay on path and keep your attitude good, because how you're going to come out of this is how you go through it. Number 3, he says, be disciplined in your path. This is your journey. Stay the course. Don't be tempted. Be careful what you choose. Choices have consequences, and some choices can cause you to lose everything you love the most. He's saying stay faithful to your path. Do what you need to do. Understand long-term investment of your actions, right? And in this is also your mental health. Take care of yourself mentally and physically. Do what you need to do. And number 4 is love others as I have loved you. Just because we're having a bad day doesn't mean others need to, right? We need to push in, do good, use the love of Christ, and help others when we are given the opportunity, even when it's not convenient, even when our storm is raging, we still help others. If you need encouragement and comfort, go give encouragement and comfort. So this is the wisdom of James. This is what he is telling them. This is what you need to do in this adversity you're going through. It's intense, huh? How about that? Is that better? Yeah? So I was with a friend of mine and we were golfing, and this sunset came up and I took the picture. And it's beautiful. And I had shared with some people, each one of them, that in the sunset or watching the stars or a walk in the woods, there's something about it that gives perspective. It kind of puts things in place. And I think it's something to do with us being a part of God's creation. And if we'll slow down and look at some of the beauty and wonder of his creation, because the sunset's a process. It's not an event. But in that process of watching that sun goes down, there's something that starts to slow us down and kind of bring our cadence back or our metronome back to God's creation. So I would tell you, find a good sunset daily if you can. Regenerate, rejuvenate. Find what helps you center, right? Now there's one emotion that I didn't bring up, but yet it should be there. It's in the very first thing. Do you know what the number 1 commandment given in the Bible is? Above all others, do you know what the number 1 commandment is? It's fear not. Fear not. Be not afraid. Yet the vast majority of the people that were told to fear not didn't stop fearing. They were still afraid. I got to ask myself, why were they given the message of fear not if they knew they were going to still be afraid? And which made me think, well, I don't think that the behavior that was desired was to ever stop fearing, because understand emotions are still going to be there, but how we move through them and what we focus on rather than giving in to the temptation of it's not fair, right? Or anxiety and worry, because that's what that brings. I think the behavior that was desired when you heard a message from God that told you to fear not, it gave you courage. The courage to get up, embrace the storm, and put your faith to the test, even though you're afraid. I think that was the desired outcome. So if you're going through adversity, or if you're not, you will be. I mean, it's built in. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to remember this message, and I want you to fear not. I want you to embrace it, push in with your faith, and put it to the test. Trust God, trust the process, but fear not.